How many business owners are here? Can I see a show of hands? Everybody here a business owner? Anybody know a business owner? Awesome, you're in the right spot. So today I want to talk about mindset, and you're probably thinking, gee, I'm a business owner and I want a better business. Do you know what the necessary prerequisite is to becoming an owner of a better business? First, the business needs a better owner. How do you like me so far?
Love it.
Because many business problems are in fact personal problems in disguise. Many business problems are a personal problem in disguise. And so in order to have enduring success, all success starts with mindset. If you're getting the results that you want, that's awesome, congratulations. If you're not getting the results you want, something about your mindset likely needs to change. That's the premise of tonight's talk. Everybody want to stay for that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So it starts with this woman, Carol Dweck, who's a professor at the University of Stanford, very prestigious school, decades of research. The result of that research is that she discovered people largely have one of two mindsets. They're either fixed, they have a fixed mindset is what she described, or they have a growth mindset. Now when it comes to these sorts of things, there's never an absolute. You're never perfectly over here or perfectly over here. There's generally going to be a continuum. You're generally, however, one or the other. So if you have a fixed mindset, you tend to want to look good. It's more important for you to look good. If you have a growth mindset, your mindset is about learning and growing in opportunities. When it comes to challenges, if your mindset is fixed, you tend to walk away from challenges. People with growth mindsets embrace challenges, want to take on the challenges. When it comes to obstacles, can you see how this is developing? People with a fixed mindset let obstacles get in the way. If you have a growth mindset, you figure, how do I overcome this obstacle? You completely have a different approach to how you go about thinking about things. When it comes to effort, people with a fixed mindset say effort's not worth it. Doesn't matter anyway. People with a growth mindset see effort as a way to get success. Criticism. People with a fixed mindset don't welcome criticism. Anybody here like that? On the other hand, people with a growth mindset encourage criticism, encourage feedback, encourage feed forward, because that's how they can grow. People with a fixed mindset, when they regard the success of others, are jealous. People with growth mindset have a completely different approach. They embrace that and say, how can I enjoy the same level of success? So what's the bottom line here? People with a fixed mindset plateau early. People with a growth mindset continue to evolve. Now when I read this, I thought that this was kind of a limited, very narrow perspective to take and to interpret the entire world through this filter of one or the other. Tonight, though, I'm going to talk about some of the connections I've made and see if it doesn't make sense for you as well about how others have expressed the same idea. So, people with a fixed mindset focus on judgment. People with a growth mindset focus on improvement. Would you like to hear how that sounds?
Yes.
I'm so stupid. Anybody ever said that to themselves?
Yes.
Oh, no.
People, on the other hand, might say something like, what am I missing? How can I overcome? It's an entirely different perspective, isn't it? Does anybody feel like they've ever been on the fixed side and said some of those things to yourself? Yeah. So how you approach failure is often a determinant of how you enjoy success. How you approach failure and what you think of failure and how you respond to failure is a predeterminant of success. Would you like to see an example? What did Michael Jordan have to say about this? Anybody want to tell me how many rings he's got? 6. You know what's amazing about that? There are two three-peats. Two three-peats, which is one three-peat is phenomenal. But here's what he did. He three-peated, or won the championship 3 times in a row, then quit, started playing baseball, wasn't very good at baseball, came back, played basketball, and three-peated again. Phenomenal. Maybe this guy can teach us something. So he sees failure as part of the process of becoming successful. I think it was Churchill who says, it's only a failure when you decide it is. Until you make that decision, it's just part of your progress. 40 years before this guy said, Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. Now, if you want to figure this out some more, this is Carol's book on the subject. It's worth reading. And if you're wondering to yourself, am I more on the fixed mindset or do I have a growth mindset? Check it out and take this test online. So who's asking this question of themselves at the moment? Who am I? Can we take a minute to define what that means? Who am I? So on the right-hand side, who you are is the results that you produce. It's the actions, it's your behavior, it's your physiology, it's your decisions. Those are the visible things that we can see of other human beings, and what that produces is results. It's informed by the inputs, your ideas, skills, training, knowledge, and that's driven and informed by your goals. Does this make sense? They all go through a filter, and that filter is your mindset. And all of our mindsets are different. And our mindset is made up of those components, our beliefs, values, identity, culture, and environment. What's interesting about the mindset is just like an iceberg, we only see about 10% of an iceberg, don't we? 90% of an iceberg is below the water line, and so is our mindset. The only thing we get to see of other human beings is the stuff above the surface, and that's what they say and do. That's the only thing that we can recognize. But why do some people behave and say and do different things than other people? That comes from their mindset. And so you can see it ranges on a scope from being conscious, above the water, things that we're aware of, to subconscious, things that we could be aware of if we got sensitive to it. So I want to unpack this a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, what are beliefs? What are beliefs? How would you define it? What's an example of a belief? Let me give you a little bit of a skill testing question. I want you to record, to make a note of the first word that comes to your mind when I say the word money. Success. Who else? Give me some other examples.
Abundant.
Good. Abundant. What else?
Game.
Pardon me?
Game.
Game.
Love it.
Love it.
Fun.
Fun. What else? Capacity. Some more examples.
Freedom.
Freedom. What else?
Security.
Security. Now here's the thing. Every single one of us expressed a different idea about money. Let me ask you this. What is money? How would you define money?
Pieces of deceased notables on it.
Pieces, pardon me?
Pieces of paper with deceased notables.
Notables on it. Well, that's a manifestation of it for sure. Wouldn't you agree that money is an abstract concept backed by confidence in its absolute form? And you know what? Every single one of us has a relationship with money. If you believe that money is the root of all evil, what would you do? How would you behave if you were suddenly given a lot of money? If money is the root of all evil, wouldn't you do everything you could to undermine that money? Of course you would. That's how your beliefs work. What's the average middle-class person think you do with money? Money is to spend, pay off debt. If I asked Jimmy Pattison that question, what would he say?
Make more money.
Make more money. Who's heard the story of people who win the lottery? They live in a trailer park somewhere. Suddenly everybody in the trailer park's got a new truck, but 5 years later they're broke. Everybody knows that story. Because the person who lives in a trailer park, I'm going to say, with a broad brush, largely hasn't learned or doesn't have the beliefs or can't have the responsibility of a lot of money because their belief system doesn't support it. So here's what I'm going to say to you. If you want to see sustained changes in your behavior, other than having discipline, the only way it's sustainable is if you shift your beliefs. So beliefs are opinions that we hold to be true. Opinions. So the thing about beliefs is we make them up. The beliefs are conclusions we arrive at based on our experiences, based on what we think works. And as humans, there's one thing we will always do. We will always satisfy a need. We will do anything to satisfy a need. And so it's always right. Sometimes we don't act in the right way. So then what are values? How do we distinguish between beliefs and values? What's an example of a value? How about values like having pride or being humble? Two ends of the spectrum. Both presumably desirable values. Where do values come from? They come from upbringing. What else do they come from? Culture. What else? Our environment. So the difference between beliefs and values are ones that we adopt based on external sources of authority. So that could be our parents, schools, communities, church, books. So we adopt values. If you go to Google and type in a list of values, Google will send you lots of lists with 600 or more values. So beliefs can change more easily than values do. But is it true that we have the same values in our 20s as we do in our 50s? No. Did your values change when you became pregnant? Oh my God, in an instant. So values are different in that there are concepts that we deem to be important. This is my definition. Someone else may have a different definition of values, but the thing that I'd like to at least the point I'd like to make here is that values and beliefs are different. Often we kind of confuse it and people think it's the same thing, and lots of times it's the way we talk, it is the same thing. For tonight, I'd like to make the distinction that there's a difference. So as we go deeper into our subconscious, deeper into who we are, what's our identity? How do we define our identity? Our identity is who we are. How would you define that? I'm sorry, what did you say? Hold on, Michelle. What did you say, Karen?
Beliefs and values.
Beliefs and values? What did you say?
Some define it as their job title.
Job title? I'm going to give you this definition. Anything you say to yourself, about yourself, when no one else is looking. The things you say to yourself, about yourself, when no one else is looking. That's your identity. I'm a great skier. I'm a great dad. I can't do math. Remember that part? So anything you're saying to yourself about yourself is the way that you've framed up your identity. It's the way that you've defined your identity. The things you say to yourself about yourself. Does that make sense? Okay. What then is culture? Anybody flown Air Canada? WestJet? Do they have the same culture?
No.
Same industry, same aircraft, same country? How can they be so different? Leadership. And the leadership creates their culture. So different companies can have different cultures. Can different countries have different cultures? So I was in Japan. I was on a train. And this train was very full, as you can imagine, in Japan. And not only was I the tallest person on this train, I was the only non-Japanese person on this train. I was the only person on this train who was not Japanese. Now think about your experiences here in Vancouver if you go on the Canada Line or SkyTrain. Quite likely the entire United Nations are going to be represented. And so Japan has very much a culture of excluding foreigners. That's their culture. So culture can drive behavior, doesn't it? Different cultures, different setups drives different behavior. So then what's environment? Let me ask you this. Where's the worst place to send a criminal? The worst place to send a criminal is jail. What the hell happens to a guy who's a criminal when he goes to jail? Who's he hanging out with? He's hanging out with other. Can you see what the fundamental flaw is with our criminal justice system? You see how that works? Let's say you were living on the downtown east side, and we took that person and moved him to Kerrisdale. Has anybody seen the posts on Facebook where they take the people that are the equivalent of living in the downtown east side and they put them in suits and watch how people respond to them differently? There's a current Facebook post. So an example of an environment can be a prison, which drives behavior, or, as one example, the downtown east side versus, say, for example, Kerrisdale. So the sum of all of this is a mindset. Everybody willing to accept that definition? Everyone willing to accept that if you want to see sustained change in behavior, that something about mindset has to change. And that can be both easy and hard. So let's talk about some of the other ways that people have done this. Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Successful People. Habit number 1 is be. So what is be proactive? Be proactive is the choice you make between stimulus and response. Be proactive is to be respondable, respond-able. Stimulus and response. Now let me give you an example of that. One of the learnings that Stephen Covey used is a guy named Viktor Frankl. Anybody know who Viktor Frankl is? Viktor Frankl was a exactly. Before that, he was a professor in Vienna, a psychiatrist. And as a result of that, he was very interested in human behavior. And he got to a place where he said he had more freedom than the guards. He was in Auschwitz. He had more freedom than the guards. How is this possible? The mindset. Because the guards were free to leave every day. He wasn't. But he was free to make his choose how he responded, which the guards apparently weren't. Because apparently they were kicking people and shooting people and getting upset with people. So even in the direst of circumstances, Auschwitz, people can choose their response. How many people waved a finger at the last person that cut you off in traffic?
I don't have a car, but I'm raising hand for all those people who did raise their hand.
So how long is the space between stimulus and response? Instant, exactly. So how much control, how respondable were you? Not at all. So one of the mindsets of successful people, I'm going to make this point, is to be proactive. To have a gap, a space that you can manage between something happening and what you do about it. You can be respond-able. Does that make sense? So he talks about it, a circle of concern versus the circle of control. People on the left, very big circle of concern, very small circle of control. People on the right decide the circle of concern doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters, the only thing they can do something about is the circle of concern, and they work hard to increase it, to grow the size of the circle of concern. Proactive people focus their efforts on the circle of control. Reactive people on the circle of concern. So here's what I'd like to leave you with on this thought. Anytime you think the problem is out there, that's the problem. Anytime you think the problem is out there, that's the problem. So the thing you want to ask yourself is, what levels of additional responsibility can I take, respondability can I take to influence the outcome? If you didn't like the outcome, you didn't like the result you got, you can't change what happened. The only thing you can change is what you do. So that's Stephen Covey. There's another guy named Julian Rotter, 1954, came up with this idea. What is your locus of control? Locus is Latin for location. How do you perceive where control resides? So people who have an internal locus of control make things happen. People with an external locus of control, stuff happens to them. What's that phrase? Happens? Does that make sense? So people who say, I have control, I can take as much control as I care to take on, and I'm always looking for new ways, additional ways that I can grow my locus of control. There's another guy, Jack Canfield. Many of you know him as the guy who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. He's also an expert on success. So his way of expressing the same idea is E plus R equals O. E plus R equals O, where E stands for event, O stands for outcome, and R stands for response. Kind of the same idea as habit number one, isn't it? Event plus response equals outcome. Something happened, an outcome was arrived at. If you didn't like the outcome, what can you change? What you did about it. You can have everything you want in life if you take on the idea that I didn't like the outcome, what can I do differently to get an outcome I prefer? And that's the growth mindset, isn't it? That's what Carol Dweck was talking about. And so here's the 3 examples. I encourage you to do a little homework on this. This Success Principles, Jack Canfield's book, got 63 principles. Principle number 1 is E plus R equals O. 7 habits. These are cornerstone lifelong learnings. So here's another way that I want to express this idea, is this idea of living above the line. So people who live below the line blame others, make excuses, or deny there's even a problem. What are those initials? Say them loud. BED. They're in bed. People above the line take ownership, are accountable, and take responsibility. So the initials here, OAR. So below the line, the wind and the currents are going to push your metaphor, the boat, in whatever directions the wind and currents do. Above the line, you're going to use the sail and the rudder to go in the direction that you want. So here's what I recommend you do, or something you might like to think about in your business or family or your relationship, is to do this. Would it be okay if we lived above the line? If you feel like I've gone below the line, would you let me know? Would you let me know? Would it be okay if I did the same for you? You now have a contract. You have an agreement. And both of you will help each other, or your team, or your colleagues, or the business you're running, set a standard of conduct. So you can be a victor or a victim. Do you know all stress is self-induced? All stress is self-induced. Think about that for a second. No one but yourself creates stress for yourself. It's what you choose to do about the influences. If your boss is on your case, you can choose to be stressed out about that, or otherwise. You can make a choice about that. And that's what this notion of in control or being a victim. So let me move this in a different direction. There's a guy named Ilya Prigogine who got one of these, Nobel Prize, because he discovered this. Wow. Yeah, no kidding. What is he talking about? Who knows what entropy is? Can someone tell me what entropy is? What's entropy? Things in nature are a trajectory of growth and then dying. Things in nature are either growing or dying. And what he discovered is what he coined perturbation. And the root word of perturbation is perturb. And so if you apply enough pressure in a confined space, you can reverse the effects of entropy. And that's what turns coal into diamonds. That's what turns coal into diamonds. Now, how does this apply to what we're talking about? That is your comfort zone. There it is, that's your comfort zone. Anybody seen this one before? Yeah. All the magic happens outside your comfort zone. All the magic happens outside your comfort zone. So it's only when we get to the edges of our comfort zone that our comfort zone grows. What does it feel like when we're at the edge of our comfort zone? Uncomfortable. It has to, because that's the edge. And if we get to the edge and we say, oh, this is too scary, I'll back it up, what happens? The dying zone. Your comfort zone shrinks. You're either growing or dying, right? That's what nature says. You're either growing or dying. Does that make sense? Can you see the value of perturbation? Let me give you an example. That's me. Below, those are two snowcats. Just to give you a sense of scale. I'm a pretty good skier. For a while, I lived in Toronto. Remember, I was in tip-top Toronto and all those years. So when I came skiing, I'd go skiing for many years with my buddies. While living in Toronto, I'd only go skiing for about a week a year in March. Guess what happened to my comfort zone? Places that I used to go with abandon, that my buddies were going with abandon, suddenly frightened the hell out of me. The very places I'd been before. So your comfort zone can shrink. Now this is in terms of skiing. It's important, but it's not a life skill. Where in your life are you backing away from the edges of your comfort zone? Now the other side of that is once we get past our comfort zone, we get into the world of, and if we go beyond that, what happens? Anybody been there before? When we get into panic, what's our instinct there? Retreat and to get stuck. So it's good to feel that growth beyond. Too much of a good thing is the exact reverse. So back to my skiing world. This is in the Monashees. That's pretty cool. I'm a great skier, but I would never do that. I've never done that. I've never jumped off a cliff, done a belly roll, and I don't know where he plans to land. That's way past my comfort zone. Can you see how that makes sense? So here's the thing about coaching. Lots of people think business coaching is about the business of business coaching. It's about, the systems, tools, strategies, financial plans, money, marketing. It's the business. The other thing about coaching is it's about performance. And that part is I can't do your push-ups. I'll help you do push-ups and you'll do better quality push-ups. Roger Federer has a coach. Why does the best tennis player in the world have a coach? Because he wants to be better. Do you have to be the best tennis player in the world to be the coach for the best tennis player? No. The most important part of coaching is this part, though. Most business problems are a personal problem in disguise. When it all comes together, that's your happy result. So here's what I said in the beginning. If you're a business owner and you'd like a better business, first, the business needs a better owner. And Jim Rohn very aptly put it this way. Work harder on yourself than you do on your business. Work harder on yourself than you do on your business. The secret to having a better business is to have a better you. So identity is something that we can actively engage in every day. So let me ask you this. Who's got a written definition of the best you can be? Who has written out and said, this, when I'm at my best, this is who I am. I'm becoming this person. Do you think it might be a good idea to have that? Stephen Covey asks the question this way. Why don't you write your eulogy? Why don't you write your eulogy? What would you like people to be saying at your eulogy? Probably positive things, nice things, great person, fabulous family. So the question is, what would you have to do today to earn and deserve that eulogy? That's another version of saying, do you have a written definition of the best you can be? So the Navy SEALs have a motto. The Navy SEALs say, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because that's how, perturbation is how you turn coal into diamonds. And so my final thought for you tonight is this: with the right mindset, you can be amazing. Now go be the best you can be. Thank you.